Franklin didn't wake up one day and decide to become a drug lord. There was no single moment when he turned a corner and left his innocence behind. That's the haunting part. His transformation was slow, calculated, and wrapped in good intentions. In Snowfall, Franklin isn't portrayed as a villain in the traditional sense. He's a mirror, reflecting what happens when a brilliant mind is corrupted by ambition, survival instinct, and an environment designed to chew up young black men and spit them out. To understand Franklin Saint's dark psychology, we have to strip away the glamour of drug money and the street bravado. We have to look at the boy who became the man, and the man who became the monster. Franklin's story begins not with violence, but with curiosity. Born and raised in south-central Los Angeles during the early 1980s, Franklin is a product of a time when crack cocaine was about to erupt like a bomb in black communities across America. His environment is economically strangled, racially policed, and politically abandoned. Franklin isn't blind to this. He's observant, calculating, and most importantly, hungry for something bigger. He's not your typical street kid. He's smart, painfully smart. His grades are sharp, his insights sharper. He reads. He watches. He absorbs, but intelligence in the hood is a dangerous thing if you don't know where to aim it. Franklin is deeply aware of the walls closing in around his neighborhood, and he's desperate to escape. Not just for himself, but for his family. His mother Sissy is grinding just to keep them afloat, and Franklin hates that. He hates the helplessness of it all. That helplessness, that seed of I have to do something, is where the darkness starts to take root. Franklin believes he's not just smarter than the system, he believes he can outmaneuver it. That's the beginning of the delusion. Franklin's introduction to the drug world isn't a hard shove, it's more like a seductive whisper. When he meets Avi Drexler, the Israeli arms dealer who first introduces him to wholesale cocaine, Franklin's eyes light up, not with greed, but with possibility. He sees a system. He sees structure. He sees a business. But here's where his psychology starts to twist. Franklin doesn't just want to sell drugs. He wants to control the supply chain. He wants to build an empire from the inside out. His ambition isn't short-sighted, it's strategic. That's what separates him from the average dealer. Franklin studies the game like it's economics, like it's politics. And in doing so, he begins to see human lives, addicts, dealers, family, as variables in a grand equation. This is where his empathy begins to erode. Slowly. Subtly. Not because he stops caring about people, but because he starts prioritizing the bigger picture over individual suffering. Every move becomes justified in his mind as part of a larger plan. He tells himself it's for the good of his people. That is bringing wealth to a forgotten community. That is creating opportunity, but the truth is, Franklin's already losing himself in the power. By season 2, Franklin is living a double life. On one hand, he's the quiet, polite son still trying to help his mother open a real estate business. On the other, he's running a rapidly growing drug empire. This duality isn't just for show, it's the foundation of his psychological deterioration. He's compartmentalizing at a dangerous level. He learns how to silence the part of him that hesitates, the part of him that knows better. When bodies drop, he rationalizes. When friends betray him, he hardens. He learns to suppress guilt like it's a weakness. In fact, Franklin's mind begins to treat morality as a liability, something that could get you killed. What's even darker is that he starts applying logic to justify violence. Killing becomes a form of quality control. Fear becomes a tool of management. He's no longer just reacting, he's proactively engineering terror to keep his empire intact. And he does it all with calm, chilling composure. This isn't just survival anymore. It's evolution. Franklin is no longer trying to escape the system, he's building his own version of it. Franklin's greatest weapon is not a gun, it's his mind. And the darker it gets, the sharper it becomes. He manipulates with surgical precision. Whether it's friends, family, or rivals, Franklin knows exactly how to speak to people's fears, desires, and weaknesses. Take his relationship with Leon. At first, Leon is his closest friend, hot-headed but loyal. Over time, Franklin learns how to manage him, how to calm his rage and steer his energy. He talks Leon down from the ledge more than once, not because he cares, though part of him still does, but because Leon is a piece on the board. A valuable one, but expendable if necessary. Even worse is the way he handles Melody. The girl next door turned crack addict is a living embodiment of the destruction Franklin is causing. And yet, when she spirals, Franklin chooses to emotionally detach. His love for her is buried under layers of guilt and pragmatism. Her pain is too much of a mirror, so he avoids it. Rationalizes it. Pushes it aside. This is what makes Franklin so dangerous. He understands people deeply. Not to connect, but to control. As Franklin's empire expands, so does his paranoia. Trust becomes impossible. Every relationship is transactional. Even his own family becomes a threat if they don't align with the mission. His mother, who once stood beside him, starts to question the monster her son is becoming. And Franklin, rather than stop, doubles down. This is the final stage of his dark evolution, the belief that only he knows what's best. That he is the architect of salvation. That if people would just follow his lead, everything would be fine. It's delusional. Narcissistic. But it's also a survival mechanism. Franklin is in too deep to turn back. He can't afford vulnerability. He can't afford remorse. Every piece of his humanity becomes collateral damage in the pursuit of control. By the time we reach the final seasons of Snowfall, Franklin Saint isn't building an empire anymore, he's defending a crumbling throne. What began as a calculated climb has become a psychological war zone. And Franklin, once a calm and composed strategist, is now haunted by paranoia, addiction to power, and the echoes of the people he's destroyed. This isn't just a fall from grace, this is a complete unraveling of identity. The same intellect that built the empire is now eating him alive. At his peak, Franklin doesn't see himself as a criminal. He sees himself as a god, someone who took nothing and made something. Someone who gave his community jobs, homes, resources. Someone who moved in ways the government never did. But godhood is a lonely space. When you start believing you're the only one who understands the bigger picture, you isolate yourself. And that's exactly what Franklin does. Every time someone close to him questions his choices, Leon, Sissy, Veronique, he meets them with icy detachment or outright threats. He no longer entertains debate. To him, doubt is betrayal. This is when Franklin crosses into full-blown narcissistic territory. Not the flashy, boastful type. The dangerous kind, the one that cloaks itself in logic and vision. Franklin convinces himself that everything he does is necessary. And if others can't see it, that's their flaw, not his. But here's the truth, Franklin doesn't just want to win. He wants to be right. He wants the world to acknowledge that he was the smartest, the strongest, the one who saw the future and bent it to his will. That's not business. That's ego. As Franklin's enemies multiply, from rival dealers to the CIA itself, so does his paranoia. And paranoia, once it takes root in a brilliant mind, becomes a weapon turned inward. Franklin starts suspecting everyone. He micromanages. He lashes out. He prepares for betrayal even from the people who've stood beside him since day one. One of the clearest examples of this is his relationship with Sissy. She's the moral anchor of the show, the one who always reminded Franklin of why they started all this. But when she begins to pull away, to question the blood on their hands, Franklin sees it as abandonment. Her desire to protect what's left of their family becomes, in his eyes, an act of sabotage. The psychology here is brutal. Franklin has reached a point where he'd rather burn everything down than admit his lost control. And so, he tightens his grip. Makes rash decisions. Turns violent not just out of necessity, but out of fear. Out of desperation. That's the paradox of power. The more you gain, the more terrified you become of losing it. The deepest cracks in Franklin's psyche show through his treatment of family. For all his talk of doing this for them, he starts treating them as liabilities. When Jerome grows tired of the bloodshed and wants out, Franklin manipulates him. When Louis dares to make moves without his approval, Franklin retaliates like a cartel boss. The bond that once held them together, love, loyalty, shared struggle, has been replaced by transactional logic. You're either with him, or you're against him. But the final fracture comes with Veronique and their unborn child. Franklin's obsession with reclaiming his stolen money consumes him. He stops seeing Veronique as a partner and starts treating her like a pawn. He trusts no one, not even the woman carrying his child. And then there's Sissy. The most heartbreaking moment of the entire series comes when she pulls the trigger, not just to stop the deal, but to stop her son from becoming something unrecognizable. That wasn't just a bullet. That was the last act of love from a mother who knew the boy she raised was gone. Franklin doesn't die in that moment. But something inside him does. The final version of Franklin Saint isn't a kingpin. He's a hollow man. Broke. Alone. Haunted. He stumbles through abandoned properties like a ghost, still talking about plans, still clinging to a delusion of control. The alcohol becomes his escape, but even that can't numb the truth. He lost. Not just the money. Not just the empire. He lost himself. This is what makes Franklin's arc so chilling. He doesn't go out in a blaze of glory. He fades. He withers. He becomes a cautionary tale, not a martyr or a legend, and that's where the real darkness lies, not in the violence, but in the slow erosion of a soul. He was smart enough to beat the system, but not wise enough to escape himself. In psychology, denial is one of the most powerful and dangerous coping mechanisms. Franklin lives in denial for almost the entire series. He denies the destruction he's causing. He denies the pain he's inflicting. He denies that the people around him are suffering under the weight of his choices. And when that denial finally collapses, there's nothing left to hold him up. He tells himself, over and over, that he did what he had to. That he had no choice. But the truth is, Franklin had choices all along. He just couldn't let go. Couldn't imagine a world where he wasn't in control. His pride, his fear, his ambition, they became his prison. In the end, Franklin isn't a villain. He's a warning. A portrait of what happens when brilliance turns cold, when power goes unchecked, and when trauma goes unhealed. Franklin Saint's journey is Shakespearean in scope, ambition, betrayal, downfall. But what sets Snowfall apart is that it doesn't glorify the rise or dramatize the fall. It shows us something far more unsettling, how easy it is for a good man to become something else when he believes the ends justify the means. Franklin was never a psychopath. He felt things. Deeply. But he learned how to bury those feelings in the name of survival. And once he started, he couldn't stop. That's the dark psychology of Franklin Saint, not a man born evil, but a man slowly broken by a system, and then by himself. In the end, Franklin didn't die a martyr. He didn't die a king. He died a ghost. And maybe that's what makes his story so powerful, and so terrifying. Because if someone as smart, as calculated, as driven as Franklin can fall like this, who's really safe?